Clerk will unlock the machine and take the rules. Clerk, please lock the machine. We have 62 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative. 62 present. We do have a quorum. All rise for the... Nice job. Well, I think I'm trying to rush a vote here. All rise for the invocation to be delivered by Representative Martin today, and then we're going to have a special guest, a constituent nonetheless, that's going to help us and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. So why don't we go to Representative Martin for the invocation. Representative Martin.
Dear God, we thank you for your blessings on this chamber. Let your will be our guide as we do the bidding of our citizens. Remind us always to respect the basic rights and human dignity of all those we serve. Amen.
Well, we call Matthew Lannon up to the rostrum. Matthew, who delivered such poignant testimony in committee the other night, I thought it was appropriate that Matthew lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Matthew Lannon.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Matthew. Fine job. Fine job. Thank you, Matthew. I like to have the children lead us whenever we can, whenever we wonder what we're doing this for. Look at young folks like Matthew. That's what we're doing, what we do for. So objection to approval of the journal of the previous day is printed. Hearing none, so ordered. Next order of business, communications. We do have a communication. Would the clerk please read?
January 24th, 2013. Please be informed Representative Donald Walsh will be unable to attend session today.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Committee reports. Any committee reports? New business. Any new business out there? Leader Newberry, new business. Representative Guthrie, new business. Representative Blazewski, new business. Representative Giarusso, new business. Representative Gallison, new business. Representative Lally, new business. Representative Azanaro, new business. Chairwoman Agello, new business. Representative Lombardi, new business. Representative McLaughlin, new business. Representative Ackerman, I apologize, new business. Any other new business out there? I believe we have a couple of immediate considerations. Why don't we get those out of the way for housekeeping? When we go to Representative Ferry. Representative Ferry.
Thank you, Speaker. I have an IC with the consent of the majority and minority leader. It's Ocean State Theater Company, which ran Matunic Theater for 5 summers. They moved to Warwick. They renovated an old, I think it's an auto shop. And this Friday, they're having a grand opening, and I'd like to recognize them, please.
Thank you, Representative. Why don't you send that up?
Thank you.
Chairman Mello.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a joint resolution that we passed 2 days ago here in the House honoring Monsignor Victor Vieira. I do have the Senate bill or the Senate resolution, and I would just like to have this passed also for immediate consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Why don't you send that up first, Chairman? We have a House resolution recognizing the Ocean State Theater Company upon its inaugural season and declaring January 25th, 2013 as Ocean State Theater Day in the state of Rhode Island. It is moved by Representative Ferry, seconded by Representative Shakachi, McNamara, Bennett, Trillo, Norton, Serpa, and Morgan. Any further seconds? And Tansey as well. It's moved and seconded. All those in favor, aye. All those opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Resolution prevails. We have here, and I believe this is under additional business, Chairman, on the computer system, Senate Bill 2013 S0084, by Senator DuPont and President Paiva Weed. Joint resolution thanking Reverend Monsignor Victor M. Vieira for 45 years of faithful service to God and the people of the state of Rhode Island. That is moved by Chairman Mello, seconded by Leader Mattiello, Leader Newberry. It's moved and seconded. All those in favor, aye. All those opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Resolution prevails. Next order of business is the calendar. Clerk, please call the first and only item.
Item number 1, 2013 H 5015 sub A.
Chairwoman Agello.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the House, I bring to you 50515 sub A. Before I go through the legislation, I'd like to read briefly from a letter in the Providence Journal, a letter to the editor. The letter to the editor was written by J. Stanley Lymans, who is a emeritus professor of history at Rhode Island College. He's talking about Roger Williams. He talks at the beginning of the letter about the Christmas tree or holiday tree. And I'll skip that part and just go on to what I think of is the meat of it regarding our discussions here today. On the other hand, just like Jesus Christ, Roger Williams had absolutely nothing to say about homosexuality and same-sex marriage. You can't quote either one of them for or against these matters. Perhaps we should recall that the Puritan understanding of the purposes of marriage put companionship first, ahead of procreation and the prevention of fornication. For them, having children was not the first and highest purpose for marriage, it was companionship. They understood that there were many people for whom procreation was impossible and that companionship was the essence of marriage for such people, especially for older people. If we took this view of the purpose of marriage, same-sex marriage makes complete sense. That's from Stanley Lemons, retired history professor at the Rhode Island College. On the topic of Roger Williams and same-sex marriage, there is a wonderful statue of Roger Williams, a supposed likeness in my district, and he has much to do with the way we think about government. I'll page now through 5015, substitute A. Section 1 rewrites the categories of those people eligible to marry or not marry. Section 2 deals with the applicability of this new marriage law to other laws.
I hate to interrupt you. Before we do it, why don't we get into play?
Okay.
So you move passage.
I move passage of
Chairwoman Agello
5015 sub A.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Agello moves passage. Seconded by Representative Samini, Representative Valencia, Leader Mattiello, Representative Handy, Representative Amore, Representative Ackerman, Representative O'Grady, Representative Codier, Representative Hearn, Representative Almeida, Representative Ruggiero, Representative Tanzi, Representative Canario, Representative O'Neill, Representative Craven, Representative Martin, Chairwoman Williams, Representative O'Brien, Representative Diaz, Representative Messier, Representative Ferry, Representative Macbeth, Chairman McNamara, Representative Lally, Representative Edwards, Representative Guthrie, Representative Finn, Representative Kazarian, Representative Blazewski, Representative Keeble, Representative Abney, Representative Silva, Representative Tomaso, Representative Bennett. Did I miss anyone? Apologize, folks. This is the first time I'm calling on a lot of new representatives. So I think I've got everyone. Continue, Chairwoman.
Section 2 of the bill deals with the applicability of this marriage law to other law, particularly regarding taxation and estates, things like that. Section 3 deals with licensing, marriage licenses, how they are obtained, and really makes no changes other than changing those eligible to get marriage licenses regarding their not being required to be a male and a female. Section 4 reiterates the religious protections already in our law elsewhere, but makes that explicit regarding marriage, so that it is very clear yet again that this legislation would have nothing to do with what any particular church, temple, or other place of worship would have to recognize in terms of one particular marriage, whether heterosexual or homosexual marriage. Section 5 deals with civil unions. As of January 1st, 2014, any civil union entered into in Rhode Island before that date that had not been dissolved would become a marriage, with the effective date of that marriage being the date of the civil union. Section 6 deletes the civil union law. Section 7 adds a severability clause so that if any section of this eventual law were found unconstitutional, the rest would remain. That's the bill. I have one more little thing I'd like to read to you.
Proceed.
Mr. Speaker, members of the House, I am not myself a religious person, but I read the Jewish Voice and Herald, I read the Catholic weekly paper. And I was very struck by something in the Jewish Voice and Herald last week. They had a story covering our hearing in the House Judiciary Committee and interviewed several rabbis. Rabbi Barry Dollinger, I think, is particularly interesting to me because he is an Orthodox rabbi. The Orthodox Jews do not recognize or accept marriages between same-sex couples. Rabbi Barry Dollinger of Congregation Beth Shalom on an Orthodox shul in Providence acknowledged that the issue has challenged him as an Orthodox rabbi. The Torah, in my view, certainly doesn't recognize any kind of same-sex union, he said. But given the separation of church and state, I don't really feel that it's the state's business to define matters of religion or to rule on individual religious or moral questions. Asked whether he would vote to approve same-sex marriage should it be a voter referendum question, the rabbi, who is also a lawyer, said, "As a matter of political jurisprudence, I think we should have it, same-sex marriage. As a religious Jew, I don't think Jews should be involved in same-sex marriage." Members of the House, I wanted to be sure that I wasn't misquoting Rabbi Dollinger by reading this without also talking with him. We talked on the phone. He asked me, after I told him what I was calling about, where I was on the issue of same-gender marriage myself, and I said I was in favor of it and hoped we would pass it. He chuckled and he said, "I am too. Marriage between a man and a woman is marriage to me in my temple, in my religious belief. But I do not think that I have the right or that Rhode Island should disallow marriage between two people of the same gender." He went on to talk about his regard for Rhode Island and our history of separation of church and state and recognizing the importance of that. He said that is much of what he loves about Rhode Island, and he is most appreciative that that has made being a Jew, and often discriminated against minority, much easier to live in Rhode Island. Our separation of church. At the very end of the conversation, Mr. Speaker, members of the House, this Orthodox rabbi, who would not marry two people of the same gender, asked me if there was anything he could do to help in promoting marriage equality in the state of Rhode Island. He offered his help towards reaching that end, much as he would not perform such a marriage, doesn't think it's appropriate in his temple. Mr. Speaker, We've heard in committee from many people of a variety of different religions and faiths. Nearly everyone, I believe, who testified against 5015 cited their religion, cited their God. I've just spoken to you of someone who speaks of his religion and nevertheless for this right. I would only add to that there were many religious people also who came and spoke and said that their religion really demands that we do this for equality for all. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chairman McNamara.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and ladies and gentlemen of the House. It is a privilege to be here today on this historic day and stand in support of this legislation. Our founding fathers, the founders of this great nation, had a vision, and that vision involved a new concept in the world at that time. It was a concept of equality for all people. And these simple men tried to put this concept down, and they did so in a form that is extremely eloquent and easy to understand. On June 4th, in 1776, they wrote a document that we are all familiar with, the Declaration of Independence. They stated, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men," and I will add women, "are created equal, that they are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." Abraham Lincoln loved the language, self-evident. He had read mathematics book as a child where formulas said that certain items were self-evident. I looked it up in Webster's dictionary. It means evident in its own nature, evident without proof. Passage of this legislation would reconfirm these words of our founding fathers relating to equality for all people in the state of Rhode Island and hopefully, eventually, the United States. This concept carried over to the United States Constitution. At the end of the Civil War, the 14th Amendment to our United States Constitution was added. It states, "No state shall deprive a person of life, liberty, or property without due process under the law, nor deny any person the equal protection of the laws." All people, equal protection, including individuals who are gay and lesbians, are brothers and sisters, everyone due process under the law. That is the United States Constitution. Our own Constitution here in the state of Rhode Island, and we must remember that two of the signers of the Declaration of Independence, Stephen Hopkins and William Ellery, were from Rhode Island. And these thoughts of the founders are reconfirmed and emphasized in our own Constitution, Article 1, Section 2. No person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall a person be deprived of equal protection of the laws. Almost identical to the 14th Amendment. They went farther in Rhode Island. They also stated, no other qualified person shall solely by the reason of race, gender, or handicap be subject to discrimination by law. That is our state constitution. Mr. Speaker, I would just like to put a personal face on this because I think it helps tell the story a little bit.
Proceed.
Thank you. All of us, elected officials in this room, love neighborhood cookouts and parties. And 3 years ago, we had a cookout in my neighborhood. And that perfect trifecta of late summer cookouts was on the grill. Sweet Italian sausage, soggies, and hamburgers wafting through the air. Kids around spitting watermelon seeds. Two of my friends and neighbors, two women who were married in Massachusetts, I don't know, 4 years ago when it was first enacted, came with their family. At the time, Mr. Speaker, could we have some order here? Thank you. At the time, their children, they had a 2-year-old boy who was 2. He was running around. And they had twin daughters that were 6 months. Mr. Speaker, those of us who had families and children know that there's no such thing as traveling light when you have young kids like that. So they came with the stroller, the bags, and all of that stuff. And I was talking to them, and one of them had the 2 twins, and she was reaching for something. I said, here, let me take one, being a father, plus being an elected official. You know how we are with kids. Never give up an opportunity to hold a baby. And little Evelyn looked up to me and smiled. And all of a sudden, a new element to this debate really dawned on me. This bill has been called marriage equality, but that beautiful child smiling at me reminded me that this is really about family equality, and that little girl, Evelyn, deserves the same rights and due process as every other kid at that neighborhood cookout, and that family deserves equal justice and equal rights under our Constitution. So, with that said, Mr. Speaker, I would ask that we support these fundamental rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all Rhode Islanders, end discrimination, and bring equality to all of our families, and I would ask for everyone's support. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, we have no further lights. Now we have a light. Representative Corvdisi, going to call the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, here we are, the bottom of the first slippery slope. And that reference will become clear as I speak today. Mr. Speaker, a brief preface before my remarks. When a person stands in opposition to a politically correct issue or idea, that person finds himself subjected to vilification by the left, by activists, journalists, the media, labeled a bigot, prejudiced, in the case of the subject matter before us today, homophobe, and many other words not suitable for prime time. To those of you who disagree with my position today on gay marriage, I say 2 things. First, labels and commentary are inconsequential. Second, When discussing an issue of such gravity and importance as that before us, truth must not be sacrificed on the altar of political correctness. Our First Amendment guarantees freedom of speech to all, but our freedoms mean nothing if not put to appropriate use. The importance of the subject matter before us necessitates a frank and blunt discussion within the parameters of civil discourse and debate, and I intend to exercise my First Amendment right this evening. Mr. Speaker, members of the House, you have before you for consideration the single most important piece of legislation you or any subsequent Rhode Island House of Representatives will ever consider. Now, there are some people in this room and many watching who are saying, the single most important piece of legislation? What is this guy talking about? I'm working 2 jobs and my wife is working 1 just to scrape enough money to pay the mortgage. My 2 brothers-in-law have been out of work for 2 years. I haven't had a raise in 3. I haven't had a vacation in 4. I'm driving a 7-year-old car. Grandma has to choose between taking her medication and eating. The roads and bridges in this state need some work at times. Our educational system sometimes fails our students, and the state is at or near the bottom for some of the major economic indicators in the country. Where are their priorities? Where are their priorities? To those of you here and at home thinking this, I say to you, this is a priority. Budgets will come and go, unemployment will rise and fall, the poor will always be with us, the rich will always be taxed, the hard-working middle-class citizens of this state will always bear the brunt of the economic burden. But this, ladies and gentlemen, this is an irrevocable societal game changer. We'll go out to dinner later. It'll only be you and me.
I think it's a man, though.
To those of you who've made candidate promises to support this bill, do you realize the enormity of that promise? Do you realize the enormity of the action you will be taking simply by pressing a button? Let me clue you in. There is no one in this chamber, not my friend, the distinguished Speaker of the House, Gordon Fox, not Arthur Handy, not Frank Ferry, not myself. There is no one outside this chamber, the distinguished members of the Senate, our general officers, the distinguished members of our judiciary, our law enforcement community, our legal community, our business community, our educational community, our religious community, our gay community, or our straight community, who have an inkling of where the last domino of educational, economic, social, and legal change will fall if this bill becomes law, once the activist judges and the activist lawyers and the activist educators and the activist members of the gay community and the ACLU and their pawns get done interpreting it. The proponents of gay marriage tell us to look to our sister state, Massachusetts. I, too, ask you to look at Massachusetts, and when you do, pick up a copy of the booklet, What Same-Sex Marriage Has Done to Massachusetts. The educational, legal, and social changes described in this booklet are what is in store for Rhode Island, and they are not for the common good. There is the first reason to vote against this bill. Now on to the substance of the bill. Mr. Speaker, members of the House, one way to know a thing is to first know what it is not. First, gay marriage is not about love. That is the liberal fodder presented to a criminal media gristmill in an effort to lull an unsuspecting, many times disinterested, many times apathetic, but always too busy general public into believing gay marriage will not impact their marriage, their children, or the society at large. Marriage in actuality and in implication, is not solely about love. It is not solely about romantic emotional union. It is not solely about the sexual gratification of two people. Marriage is also significantly the biological unit for the family, promoting the well-being of children, providing them with a framework of identity and responsibility, creating a stable marital order, and through this order, sustaining a civil society. By redefining marriage, by breaking and disregarding the importance of the present parameters, you are not only destabilizing the marital order and by extension, civil society, you are opening the door to further redefinition. Because if marriage is redefined basically solely on emotional romantic relationships, and any two people can marry, why not three people who love each other? That comment may be met today with scorn and derision, but I'm sure 20 years ago, if someone on this floor suggested two men or two women should be allowed to marry, they would be met with scorn and derision. But here we are. But it is not without the realm of possibility if we break the present parameters of marriage. I point to Judith Stacy, professor of sociology at New York University and a leading advocate of gay marriage, who hopes that gay marriage will promote a, quote, pluralistic expansion of the meaning, practice, and politics of family life in the United States, unquote, where, quote, perhaps some might dare to question the dyadic, meaning two, limitations of Western marriage and seek some of the benefits of extended family life through small group marriages. Is this the vision you want for Rhode Island's future? Is this the future you want for America? There is the second reason to vote against this bill. What else is gay marriage not? Gay marriage is not about civil rights. The activist gay community complains of bigotry and prejudice and how the fact that they are not afforded the right to marry grants them second-class citizen status. They compare the civil rights movement in the 60s to their campaign for gay marriage. Unfortunately, there is no analogous comparison. In my research, I found there were never any anti-gay marriage laws placed in state statute, as there were laws in some states that specifically banned whites and blacks from marrying. These anti-miscegenation laws were put in place as a result of prejudice and bigotry, and were against the natural order. These laws had to be removed in order to conform to the natural order. There have never been any anti-gay marriage laws in place because it has been understood for millennia that the natural order already exists in marriage being one man and one woman. Thus, to allow gay marriage, to place laws on the books allowing gay marriage, would be contrary to the natural order. And there is your third reason to vote against this bill. So then, if gay marriage is not about love and not about civil rights, then what is it about? Simply put, gay marriage is the strictly secular redefinition, the strictly secular redefining by a vocal, politically active, and powerful minority and their adherents of the well-established norm and fundamental building block of our society, that being the union of a man and a woman, with total disregard for traditional family structure, the well-being of children, religious liberties, and the stability of civil society. And with that definition, it is vitally important to note two things. First, in gay marriage, we are talking a wholesale redefinition, not an extension of marriage. Gay marriage advocates contend they are simply extending marriage to those who are presently excluded from it. As I have already stated, this is not true, and I've already pointed to the economic, educational, legal, and social changes inherent in such a redefinition. Second, there is a complete absence and disregard for First Amendment rights of religious liberties, and by extension, religious rights of conscience in this bill. For those whose faith does not recognize gay marriage, I've
given you double the time, Doc. Representative Corbisi.
Mr.
Wrap it up.
Mr. Speaker, remember my text.
I do.
Let me repeat that because I lost my train of thought.
Continue.
Second, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Second, there is a complete absence and disregard for First Amendment rights of religious liberties and, by extension, religious rights of conscience in this bill for those whose faith does not recognize gay marriage. Representative Handy's bill provides the obvious, that religious officials will not have to preside over ceremonies that are not consistent with their beliefs. That is already guaranteed in the U.S. Constitution. But there is no extension of protection of religious rights of conscience for religious institutions such as schools or hospitals or individuals who are practicing members of their faith. That is simply not acceptable. Let me repeat that. That is simply not acceptable, and I'm sure that the Rhode Island Senate will concur. Regarding Representative Handy's complete absence of true religious liberty protections, the Alliance Defending Freedom for Faith and Justice has stated, quote, "The religious protections put forth in the proposed legislation are not only inadequate, but the extreme narrowness of those protections suggests intent to legislate prejudice toward individuals who possess deeply held religious beliefs about marriage. As the Sixth Circuit recently stated in its opinion, declaring that a university cannot compel a student to alter or violate her belief system, tolerance is a two-way street." Or, to paraphrase a memorandum recently I read on the subject, gay marriage proponents have many times used the phrase "live and let live," but Representative Handy's legislation suggests comply or else. And the lack of any true religious rights of conscience provisions in this legislation is the fourth reason to vote against this bill. Before I conclude, Mr. Speaker, and yes, there is a conclusion, I'd like to take this opportunity to note that you've kept your promise not only to your constituents in District 4, but your supporters within the gay community. You're to be commended for keeping a promise. And today, you've kept your promise to me and others in this room who oppose gay marriage. You've allowed an appropriate vetting. And I don't profess to be the alpha and the omega of the opposition here, but I would like to think that I've presented a cogent argument to vote against gay marriage. I thank you for the time you've given me and your friendship. In conclusion, members of the House, I believe the laws we promulgate and pass in this chamber should reflect three things: the common good, common sense, and where applicable, the natural law. I maintain gay marriage is not in the best interest of the common good, that gay marriage defies common sense, and gay marriage is contrary to the natural law. Based on those reasons and those aforementioned, I ask you to defeat this bill. Mr. Speaker, thank you once again.
Thank you, Representative Korbesi. Representative Blazewski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members of the
Before you
House.
begin, I understand there's a lot of passion in the room, and we're going to devolve into a series of counter applauses and booings and whatnot. So guests, please refrain from commenting, clapping during the debate. There'll be plenty of time to both after the debate is over. Proceed, Representative Blazewski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, member of the House. I rise in strong support of this legislation. I think after hearing Representative Korbesi's argument, I think it's important to remember what we're voting on today. We're voting to extend the same rights that nearly all of us in this chamber have to gay and lesbians in our state who want to enter into long-term committed relationships. And why would anyone here want to prevent two loving adults from entering into, under our civil laws, a binding contract to protect themselves and their family? Why would you ever want to do that? Why would you ever want to do that? This bill, everyone in this room should vote for because it is just, it's fair, it protects families, and it protects religious liberties. Now, I have a great deal of respect for those in this room that have struggled with this issue. And they've struggled with it because of, not because of bigotry or hatred, but because of strongly held, deeply held religious beliefs. And I have a great deal of respect for those in this chamber, including Representative Korbesi, who base their argument on deep-held beliefs. But that said, folks in this room need to understand that this is a bill that supports our gay and lesbian brothers and sisters, to allow them to get access to the good things in this world: family, friends, husbands, wives, the things you look forward to when you go home at night. That's what this does. That's all it does. The things you like in life, you're extending to people that might not be exactly like you. You know, our history in this country, in this state, is filled with moments of division and divide, where discrimination has set man against man, woman against woman, family against family. But I'm happy to report that this is not one of these days. This is a day when we celebrate the things that bring us together, that unite us, the things we enjoy and love, and we extend them to our gay and lesbian brothers and sisters. And let me tell you, this moment is not without struggle. Our President, Barack Obama, mentioned the Stonewall riots of 1969 when he gave his second inaugural address just a few days ago. But it's important to remember that gays and lesbians and their friends and allies have for centuries, quietly and in the shadows, fought for recognition and respect and dignity and equality. And that's what we're doing today, providing equality. This act will pass. This act will pass, not only here in the House, but it will become the law of this state. And not only the law of this state, but the law of every state in this nation. It may not be tomorrow, but it's only a matter of time. Talk to anyone under the age of 40. It's only a matter of time. So I urge you all in this chamber, every single one of you, to vote in favor of this, to vote in favor of equality, respect for others, dignity, and the honor that comes with uniting behind someone and with someone in marriage. And I urge you to stand on the right side of history. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Costa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll make this very, very short, seeing Doc Cravesi pretty much said 99% of what I wanted to say. But I'd like to thank you for taking the opportunity to make me speak. In this box right here, there are 7,500 signatures in opposition to this bill presented to us today. Another 10,000 signatures are in the process of being collected, and over 4,000 of these signatures are just from the city of Providence. So when you say that the majority of the people want this, I really, really can't imagine that they would. I, for one, do not. So I am in opposition to this bill. I also just want to state that probably close to 17,000 to 20,000 signatures will be copied, sent over to the Senate, and every member of the Senate will also have a copy, and many, many, many of them are constituents. I appreciate, no matter what side you're on, Mr. Speaker, whether you're opposed or whether you're for this, and the people up in the gallery, I have gay friends up in the gallery who I just adore and admire. We just don't agree on this. And that we do respect each other, and this is about respect. And thank you, Mr. Speaker, for your time.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Cravesi, it was very well said. It was very eloquent. I will be much more succinct and much less eloquent. You were correct, Representative Cravesi, that this will be a game changer. But I believe it is going to be a game changer that will make things better for our state. And it will allow all those people right now who truly love each other to enter into the same type of contract that I, along with my wife, and most of the people in this room currently enjoy. This is not a religious issue. This is not about the natural order. It is strictly a civil rights issue. Passage of this legislation will provide to all of our constituents the same rights that most of us already enjoy. As a Catholic who has been married for 30 years to my wife, Donna, I know that this legislation is not going to have any effect at all on my marriage or anyone else's marriage in this room, in this state, or in this country. Like all in this room, I've been contacted by numerous constituents, both pro and con. I have been forthright with my constituents with my position on this issue, and despite the people who disagree with me, they understand my position and they understand the way I came to this position. The 14th Amendment of the Constitution guarantees equal protection under the law, not just for some, but for all. When we pass this bill, we will be providing the same protections we already enjoy to those people who are currently denied. A minority, yes, a minority that is denied equal protection. In 1973, 40 years ago, this country outlawed interracial marriage. Weren't allowed. Today, we look around, no one even blinks an eye when you see an interracial couple. No one even thinks about it because that was antiquated, it was archaic. Hopefully 10, 20, 30 years from now, we can all look back and have the same view of gay marriage. We can say, I can't believe they didn't allow it. Today is our opportunity to stand on the right side of history. I wore this particularly bright green tie because I am going to be voting green. I urge all of you to stand with me on the right side of history. Your grandchildren someday will ask you, Grampy or Grammy, how did you vote on marriage equality? Hopefully you can say the right thing. I voted for it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative Edwards. Representative McLaughlin.
Mr. Speaker, I have an amendment which I'd like to introduce.
What is your amendment?
It's LC 001442.
Representative McLaughlin moves passage of Amendment LC 00144/2. Is there a second? Second by Representative Corvese. It's been moved and seconded. Explanation, please, Representative.
Explanation, Mr. Speaker. It starts off with what is currently state law. It defines marriage between a man and a woman. Okay, and I hold that definition to be true. I'd like to start off by saying on this legislation, it will probably be ruled not germane, but you know I've got to shoot from the hip and what I believe in. I'm an old guy, okay. I fought on 2 continents, okay. And I look and I say, you know, I fought against discrimination most of my life. And with that said, I look and I say, it isn't included in here, but, you know, I see a separation between church and state here. My religious beliefs tell me, okay, and what I stand for, my dog tag said RC, Roman Catholic, all right? I believe in the 7 sacraments. I believe in the 10 commandments. But it goes beyond religious beliefs. You know, I stand here today and I would have arguments. I listened into committee, both sides. Is it a moral issue? I'm not here to judge anybody, okay? I'm not here to judge anybody, and I look, maybe God Almighty will judge us, you know? He, as far as I'm concerned, he laid out the first marriage, creation of Adam and Eve. Then he went on to say, in the 10 Commandments, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife or goods. The 7 sacraments I hold near and dear to me, and these are just some of the things, you know, I want to reiterate. As far as loving someone, okay, there's nothing wrong with that. To love someone is fine. Do I agree with a lot of church doctrine? Okay, absolutely not. All right? Well, we have rules in our society. We have rules in church doctrine. And I look at these rules, it's sort of like the military. It's a society, okay? Some things you like, some things you don't, okay? But you have to go on with it. As far as equal rights and stuff like that, I stand here with my, I've gotten many emails from constituents, both pro and against. And I look and I say, yeah, it's a tough call. With that said, is there equity on both sides? You want to talk about equity? I say to all of you here today, I look and I say, this bill does not go far enough. Number one, it does not represent the satellites like the Knights of Columbus, okay? Their organizations, how they will be affected. Holy name societies. These are people in my religion, you know, that I hold near and dear, and universal religions. So, you know, I would ask that you consider these things. And I don't want to hold everybody up. I will just say to you, Speaker, I have the highest regard for you. I voted for you. From one old guy to another, you know.
Wait. You had me until that last one. You had to go there, Jim.
But anyways, you know, with that said, I'm not here to offend anybody, but I would ask you to look at these different points that I brought out. And in closing, I'd like to say, I don't know how Christ would react to this, you know, or God Almighty. Who the hell am I to judge? Anybody, okay? But I would say what Christ said to the Pharisees when Mary Magdalene come up, he said, you know, go and sin no more. Would God say that? I don't know. Another thing I like that Christ said was, render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's. Okay, render unto God that which is God's. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative McLaughlin. Representative Blazewski.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
What is your point of order?
And I do appreciate Rep. McLaughlin's deeply held religious beliefs and how he's expressed them, but we have rules that don't permit you to substitute an entirely new bill for a bill that existed. He's essentially struck out all of Rep. Handy's bill and put in new language, and it's in clear violation of Rule 16, and so it's out of order. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
And that is, you asking for a ruling of the chair, Representative?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
House Speedy is white. Take on advisement. Representative McLaughlin, I do this with as gentle a hammer as I can. I do agree with and concur with Representative Blazewski that under Rule 16, you are not allowed to substitute a bill which is not consistent with the title and the substance of the bill now before us, and this completely does the opposite. So my ruling, again, as gentle as I can give it, because I do have high respect for you, Representative McLaughlin, is that that bill, your amendment, is out of order. Representative Trillo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members of the House. You know, we passed the civil union bill, I believe it was last year, and I did vote for that legislation. I voted for the legislation because I thought, and I still believed, that the gay community deserved all of the respect and rights of marriage. And I believe that that bill did exactly that. The only thing that it left out was using the word marriage. I still believe that I did the right thing when I voted for that legislation, and I think everybody in this room that voted for it felt the same way. I believe that gays and lesbians deserve every single right and respect of their relationships that we have in marriage. What I have a problem with is I have a problem with using the word marriage to describe what today we're accepting into our society as another aspect of marriage. I would bet that, you know, we found people that are 30,000 years old when we've had meltdowns in Antarctica and places like that. What we are about to do today is we're about to rewrite the history of the world. I don't feel as though I have that power. I'm just a mere mortal person. What right do we have to change what has been 30,000 years or even older accepted terminology for relationships? Marriage has always been between one man and one woman. And I'm not making this on religious grounds. I used this analogy before. If today I proposed the game of soccer and I came to this country and I said, guess what? I have a game of soccer. We play it, we kick the ball around the field, we have a goal, we have everything exactly like you have in football, and we're going to call it football. Everybody would say, you can't do that. We already have football. And football is played with a different team. It's a different game. It would never pass. So I say to you, my objection to this is not based on any religious arguments, although I don't think we have the right to rearrange what has been accepted for 30,000 plus years. But it has to do with, if we want to do this, give it a new name. I think civil unions were fine. It could be life partnerships. And had we done that today, had we kept civil unions or life partnerships or any other word to describe the relationships that we're arguing about today, in 20 years, they would have had the same recognition, the same credibility, maybe less, maybe in 10 years, as the word marriage does. So I will be voting against it, and I would urge any of you that agree with me to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Trillo. Representative Ruggiero.
Thank you, Speaker. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the House. I rise in support of this civil rights legislation, and I certainly respect the differing opinions of my colleagues, but I do hope you'll reevaluate your perspective. Public opinion has shifted favorably on this issue over the 4 or 5 years, certainly that I've been in office, and even the President of the United States has changed his position. He talked about it Monday in the inaugural address, talking specifically about tolerance and human dignity, saying that if we are all created equal, then the love we commit to each other must be equal, and separate is not equal. I ask you to support this bill because it's about tax equity, which is very important for marriage equality. Same-sex couples who build a life together, assets together, have a home together, shouldn't be penalized by having to spend thousands of dollars, in some cases hundreds of thousands of dollars, to simply stay in a home that they've shared with someone for many, many years. Can you imagine, Rep, if you passed away and your wife had to pay $50,000, $70,000, $80,000 to stay in a home that you shared together for 20 or 30 years? It's insult upon injury. So I ask you to support this legislation. It changes our Rhode Island tax system, and we can leave the federal tax issues up to our delegation, our 2 U.S. senators and our congressmen who both support marriage equality. So I urge you to do this for your sons, your daughters, your grandchildren, your nieces, your nephews, your brothers, your sisters, whoever that gay person is that you're thinking of right now while I'm speaking, because you know someone. This state was founded on tolerance and religious freedom, and this bill is about human dignity and equality. That which is essential in life is invisible to the eye. It's in your heart. The Little Prince. Fabulous book. And I ask you to vote yes on this because it's essential to all Rhode Islanders. It's human dignity and it's equality. Thank you for listening, and thank you for the floor, Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Tansey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Some may feel that civil unions were enough when we passed it, not too long ago. I remember driving home the night that we did pass it, and I remember playing music really loud to keep my mind from wandering back to all the people I felt I had let down by telling them that somehow their love was different from the love that I have for my husband, that somehow their love was not equal. That night, I stopped at the dock on the salt pond by my house, and I lay there looking up at the stars, anticipating this day. The day we would finally send the message to our gay and lesbian brothers and sisters that their love is joy, that theirs is as true as mine. And today is that day. I could not be prouder to cast my vote for love with my daughter beside me, so that she can grow up in a world where she and her friends will only know the joy that I have known during my life at a first crush, at a first date, at first love, that their experiences, no matter the gender of the recipient of their love, are equal to those experiences I had growing up, and in no way less. I thank you very much for the opportunity to vote on this today, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Tansey. Representative Samini.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, I suspect that none of you are in doubt of how I am voting today, but I couldn't let this moment pass without sharing with you my thoughts on this issue. I don't have the personal experience with marriage that many of you have. I, as you know, was just recently married, but I have witnessed the struggles of family members, of friends, of neighbors, of constituents, and of colleagues who have not had the common decency afforded to them of recognition of their relationships, respect for their relationships, and for their financial and emotional stability, knowing that they cannot count on their community to support them. They cannot count on their community to respect their relationship the way that mine is. I've been reflecting on this for a few days, and I wanted to share a little story that in 2004, I, for the first time, testified at the State House. Just a random person, not elected, not thinking about running for office, not affiliated with an organization. In 2004, I went to room 313 and testified in favor of marriage equality. In my testimony, and there's probably a video of this somewhere, I said, I don't want to get married. I don't know why anyone wants to get married. But I knew that no one would stop me if I wanted to. 2.5 years ago, I met someone that I then found I wanted to marry. And he and I went with a check for $34 to Providence City Hall. No one raised an eyebrow. No one flinched. We filled out a form, and I was able to get married. And yet, my family members, my aunts who've been together for over 20 years, have had to spend a lot of money to protect their assets, even though their love and their commitment is greater than I've known at this point being in such a new relationship. We have colleagues in this room who have spent decades with their partners, with their husbands that they've had to leave this state to commit to. And I just implore you all to think about the fact that we, most of us on this chamber floor, have had the ease of life, of being born into a community that just accepts where we've landed. But not all people have had that ease of happenstance, of just how they ended up being born. And I implore you to think about your colleagues and your neighbors and your constituents who are asking you today to protect their rights and recognize their relationships in the way that so many of us have had done without a second thought. Thank you.
Representative Almeida.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Great members of this House. I was going for 2 years. I'm surprised to hear about brothers and civil rights. I'm proud of all of y'all. And for the time that I've been gone, and I come back and I hear about the history of civil rights. So let me go back a little bit. And let's talk about the Constitution and the protection of those who have a difference of opinion. Well, you know, I respect my good brother, Representative Corvese, for the fair fact that he believes in what he believes in. Although you and I, Doc, we disagree. You know which way I'm going to go. You can see the sticker on my shoulder here. But I don't appreciate anybody trying to hide behind, and if I heard you wrong, Doc, please correct me, to call somebody names. Oh, wait a minute. But this is a civil rights agenda. Because if you go back, way back, when in fact there were different ethnic groups, some of you, all of you, not just because of skin I'm in, but there was some ethnic divide among all of us. Or when the Japanese had to be locked up because of what was going on. The people that's sitting up in front of us today is part of a group that the civil rights agenda has always talked about. Don't divide us up into segments of who you think we are or what you think we should be. Now, I've hung up my badge and gun a long time ago. And I remember in the Marine Corps, there was a lot of gays and lesbians in the Marine Corps. And I remember a lot of gays in law enforcement. Don't matter to me if something's flying through the air or I need a backup. I don't care what you look like or what your persuasion is. I need your help because that's what makes you a brother or a sister. And there's a whole bunch up in that audience looking at us. And then, in fact, we need to realize that time does go on because every ethnic group or every group has come about in its own way eventually and has finally taken the power of being represented. What do we got to wait? Another 200 years before the mule and the 40 acres finally come our way? Well, it's not surely going to happen to these good brothers and sisters sitting up there or behind us. So I asked that if we're going to talk about civil rights, let's respect it all the way. Give Doc Corvese the respect that he has in his opinion that's different from mine. But in fact, I'm proud of you, Doc, because you did your civil rights homework. You and I had a good conversation. I'm really proud of you for that. I really am. But when I come back up here and I present a bill, I'm going to remind you about the lesson you all just gave me about civil rights and the civil rights that these people deserve. Let's vote for this bill and get it going. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Leader Mattiello.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Very good debate today. Nice points made by all of you. Thank you. What is marriage? Because that's the crux of what we're debating today. Well, it depends what you're talking about. Because if you're talking about your religious belief in marriage, that's going to be different for all of us. Some cherish our religious beliefs in our marriages and some not so much. And some of us are very religious and some not so much. And that's fine because we're all different and our beliefs in our society are all protected. So I respect all of your personal religious beliefs. But that's not what we're debating today. If you're talking about a civil contract for marriage or a civil marriage, that's what's defined in the bill. And persons of all different religions all want the same things that everybody else does. So, first of all, no particular religion can define it because we're not all of that religion. So what's a public definition? What's a marriage? Well, a marriage is a public contract. It creates rights and obligations between parties that have committed themselves to one another. And let's look at our society. Maybe we're all talking about the definition of marriage as to how it goes back a long way. I think that definition has always conformed itself to what was actually going on in society. So I'm going to look at Representative Trillo's, and I hate to do this, but you had good comments, and I respect them. But you indicated that when we did the civil union bill, and I think this would be universal, that's why I'm bringing it up. And while we did the civil union bill, I was very proud of that. I felt good about giving rights to persons that I think we all believe deserve those rights. Representative Trillo said today on the floor that he believed that civil unions deserved all the respect and rights of marriage. That's how I wrote it down, and I believe that's how it was said. All the same rights and respect. Well, in this country, in Rhode Island, and I think we actually all believe that, but in this country, and particularly in Rhode Island, can you be the same? Can you be equal? Can you get the same respect if you're treated differently, if you're called something else? If we want to give everyone the same rights, why can't we give everyone the same rights? It's a civil definition. When I go to my church, I will respect my church's definition. But the civil definition has to work for everybody. So going back to when marriage was originally defined hundreds and maybe thousands of years ago, let's look at society. Society was such that it didn't tolerate gay folks. You'd probably get beat up if you came out and indicated you were gay. And we took care of all that. We don't allow that anymore. And when we stopped allowing people for being persecuted and beat up simply because they were gay, families started sprouting and people started committing themselves to one another. And when I look at my community in Cranston and when I look at the state and our families throughout the country, we have all different kinds of families. We have traditional families like mine that I adore and love and respect. We have families of the same sex in my community that are raising children that we all respect. We all think they're as good as us. We all want to give them the same rights. And as much as we're caught up oftentimes in the religious aspect of this, we're talking about a civil contract. What do you owe each other? And by the way, if you breach that contract, what do you owe each other? I think, and the reason my argument on the floor today is very different than it would have been 3 years ago, quite frankly. 3 years ago, I would have been in opposition. But I think society is changing. And I believe that this world can be difficult to go through. And what do we all need as we go through this world? We need relationships. We need companionship. We need happiness. And if you were given a heterosexual attraction by God or wherever it comes from, you deserve happiness. And if you were given a same-sex attraction, you deserve the same exact happiness in our community, in our society today. And that's why the definition, that's why the civil definition is still changing. When I go to church, I don't expect to see any marriages of the same sex because my church doesn't permit that, doesn't believe in that. But the civil definition that has to apply to all of us, the contract that everybody of every religion, every persuasion, everybody in the community has to abide by, that should be all-inclusive. And it should reflect today the nature of our families. We're not changing the structure of society. We're making the definition catch up to what society is already doing. And that's the reason for the change. And that's why it's happening today and not 300 years ago. So, Mr. Speaker, I proudly stand here and ask everybody to support equality, support this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Leader. Leader Newberry.
Thank you, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I apologize for the laryngitis. Hopefully the microphone will amplify and will shorten what I'm going to say. I'm glad this bill is here for a vote. It's been, I think, 14 years since it was first introduced, and I think issues like this deserve a vote, whatever your opinion on them may be. Mr. Speaker, I can't imagine how you must have felt sitting in the Majority Leader's chair for 7 years, I think, not being able to get a vote on the floor on an issue that's obviously so important to you. And that's not right. That's not the way this chamber should operate. And Mr. Speaker, I ask you as we move forward after tonight, as we go through this session, that you remember there's a lot of legislation in this room that if it came to the floor for a vote would pass and pass easily. Some I might support, some I might not. That's not the point. We need a better system. Things deserve up or down votes. So please, Mr. Speaker, I ask you to remember that and put yourself in the shoes of the other reps as we move forward. The second thing I want to say is this. I've heard a lot of talk tonight about how this is a civil liberties and a civil rights issue, and I agree, and that's why I'm going to vote for it. But I hope that the same passion I'm seeing in this room is evident when other civil liberties and civil rights issues come before this chamber. Representative Almeida touched on it. There are rights guaranteed to us under the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, and other amendments of the Constitution, and other aspects of our law. And I hope the same passion to defend those is here, because you can't just be, it's not a cafeteria when it comes to civil rights. You either defend them and you're a civil libertarian, or you're not. And the third thing I want to say is this. I read, I think it was today, or it might have been yesterday, that one of the leaders in the Senate said, well, if the House sends it over, the economy is paramount, we'll hold hearings sometimes in the spring. I mean, come on. This is not rocket science. There's no reason the Senate can't vote on this next week, up or down. Vote on it. Don't hold it hostage. Whether you agree with Representative Corvese, Representative Ferry, or anybody else in this room about this bill, this should not be used as a bargaining chip in some exchange between the House and the Senate. That's outrageous. And I hope that people in this room don't let that happen, because we all know the Christmas list is being drawn up over there. So I ask the Senate, go call this for a vote. Vote on it next Tuesday in committee or Wednesday. Vote it the week after. Vote it up, vote it down. I don't know what's going to happen there. And then we'll go on and talk about the economy. Don't hold this out to dry. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll be a little less angry than Leader Newberry. You know, Mr. Speaker, when they say that there are historic days, it's very little about the day itself. What leads up to that day, what happens that day is what happens, and what happens after. So to say that this is a historic day, it truly is. The real history will be when the governor signs this. Let's hope that happens. But I certainly have not been part of this struggle, as many of you have who've been here today. But 9 years I've been in this chamber, and 9 years I've been on judiciary, and 9 years I've listened to people come before that committee. I've heard some of the most offensive things I've ever heard from people who are against it. I've heard some things from people who support marriage equality that have also offended me. But sort of touching on what Leader Newberry said, this time for this vote is now. It's here. The struggle that has led us to this date is what makes this day historic. This is a symbol, what we're doing today, and it's about time we've done it, but it's about the struggle that got us to this point and what it's going to mean from this point forward when we say as a chamber and as an individual that you support equal rights for all. So 15, 20, 30 years from now, when we're looking back on this date, and can you believe we were on the floor for almost 2 hours debating this thing where it's legal in all 50 states? So enjoy this piece of history, enjoy the struggle that got us here, but understand that going forward, we're truly making history and will only become history when this becomes law. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Ferry.
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you for all the eloquent things I've just said now, and I can't do any better. When I first came here, I used to sit somewhere over there with Joe Almeida on my left and Leader Mattiello on my right. So I had the conservative, and I had Joe. I guess we kind of, okay. This is an exceptional moment. This is an exceptional time. It truly is, like Rep. O'Neill said, this is historic, this is historic. And it's taken a long time. It has been a journey to get to this point. And I just want to point out right now some of those people who have taken this journey. First of all, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you for bringing us to this point today. 2 years ago, we did civil unions, and a lot of our community was not happy. They were not happy with you. I wasn't happy either.
Join the club.
But you are a smart man. You have class. And you knew what you were doing. And I thank you for that. I thank my husband of 30. This year, August 1st, we're going to have a big party. Well, I guess we're going to have to get married, but August 1st, we're together 32 years. You can define marriage any way you want. We have a marriage for 32 years. How many in this room has had a marriage for 32 years? Some may be on their second, their third, their fourth, I don't know. Congratulations. We're in the same club, as far as I'm concerned. 2004, it's 9 years that I've been working on the marriage equality. The bill was put in 1997, so that's 16 years. Back in 1984, we started a struggle for rights. In 1995, we had a Non-Discrimination Act for employment, for housing, for credit. And now we're talking about full equality with marriage. This is for me and Tony. This is for Jen and Lauren, who we got in the struggle together. This is for Ann and Ed Benetti, for their son, for their family. This is for Tony and Sylvia DeLuca, who are sitting over there. This is for them, for their family, for their daughter. This is for Kelly, this is for Wendy, this is for Mary, this is for Mary. I can't mention everybody up there. But this is for everybody here and everybody in Rhode Island. Let's vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Ferry. Representative Handy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm not going to take too much more time here. I think a lot of folks have said the kind of things I might have thought of that I was going to say. I've thought about it for a while, and that's actually why I think instead I'd sort of close on a personal note. Again, a lot of folks I think reflected on it, but and a lot of us have evolved on this issue, myself included. I think over this time, and it's been 11 years for me. But one of the ways I've evolved is really understanding what being married really means, and how, I've always known it was important to me, but it's become even more important to me as I've been through this issue over this time. Marriage is really unique under state law, civil marriage, and those rights and responsibilities it gives to us are really unique in that sense today. And I want to say it's apropos too that my wife Tish is here on the floor with me today too. So I'm pleased to be able to have her as a piece of this history we're making today. Most of us in this room, I think, could probably, I know I have taken for granted that we grow up, meet someone we love, get married, have a family. And until I started working on the bill, I just really didn't appreciate what I have that other folks don't. My marriage is so important to me, but I truly didn't appreciate that the right that I was born with to marry who I love and to raise a family with her is something that other folks didn't have. Today, so many of the families in our districts all around the state, every single district here in the state, don't have this basic fundamental right that many of us in the room, again, have never even really had to think about. Just this hasn't even occurred to us, I think, until these kinds of discussions started happening. So I ask all of you to help me today to share that security, the rights, the responsibilities that marriage offers all these families, all of our neighbors and friends and families here in the state of Rhode Island. And it's so important. This bill is so important. And so I agree with Representative Corvese in that as well, that I think it is one of the most important things we're going to do, and it is historic. But it's so important to so many of our constituents. What I want you to remember is, that lady down the street who maybe you go clear her walk when it's snowing, the guy that lives nearby that picks up your mail when you're going out of town. It's our neighbors, it's our friends, it's the family of our friends, it's brothers, it's sisters, it's mothers, it's fathers, it's sons and daughters. These people are the people we're talking about today, and these are the people that I ask you to, when you make your final decision, when you decide to push what button there, think about those people, remember them. There's not one person on this floor, I'm convinced, that isn't making a vote today that won't change the life of someone that you know and love. Keep that in mind. Please share with me today. Vote green today. And thank you very much, Speaker. And thank you guys very much for this lively and sensible and thoughtful debate today. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative Kennedy. There are no further lights. Make sure everyone's in the room. Clerk, please unlock the machine. Shall the act prevail? All those in favor vote green. All those opposed, red. Yes, I got it. Clerk, please lock the machine. We have 51 in the affirmative, 19 in the negative. The act prevails. Before I move on to announcements and introductions, I want to just do an introduction. And first, I want to say how proud I am of every member of this House, no matter how you just voted. They say democracy is a tough thing. It's not pretty. Sometimes it takes a long time. But it's moments like this that we have the resolve of why this state, why this country is so great. Because democracy does indeed work. It does work. And I use that because I want to recognize someone on the floor, a former colleague, who Representative Agello and I remember this. Back in 1997, the original sponsor of this legislation that I had the privilege of being in the prime sponsorship along with Chairwoman Agello. He's with us today, and I want to send him a special shout out in recognition because I think he deserves it. We have former Representative Michael Pisatoro with us, who way back in 1997 started this fight. Representative Pisatoro, the time has come. Thank you for being here today. Hi, Marcus just came in. Marcus! Thank you all. All right, I guess we have to get back to business. First of all, is there objection to transmitting all matters on the clerk's desk to His Excellency the Governor, the Honorable Senate, or the Secretary of State forthwith? Hearing none, so ordered. Announcements, introductions. Representative Diaz.
I'm sorry.
Hey, Speaker, I'm all set.
Diaz.
Thank you.
Okay. Representative Hearn.
Thank you, Speaker. An introduction, please.
Proceed.
I just want to introduce two Barrington High School seniors who came to the floor today to see this historic vote. Carl Aspeland and Michael Chiesi, who are sitting over on the wall, just to see a historic moment in Rhode Island. Thank you, Speaker.
Representative. Welcome to the House of Representatives. Representative Tanzi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. in the excitement and joy of the day, I inadvertently placed my cell phone on the desk of someone. If anyone has found my cell phone, I'd appreciate it. Thanks.
Any further announcements, introductions? Why don't we go back? Any new business? Anyone with new business? No new business? Leader Mattiello moves that the House adjourn. That's seconded by Leader Newberry. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, nay. Ayes have it. House is adjourned.